Star Wars 7 by 7 episode 2724. It's a What to Watch Now Saturday episode, and we're going to talk about Ready, which is the latest full commercial for the Book of Boba Fett, but there are also a couple of additional ones that are showing up on Twitter, little snippet ones. We'll talk about that, and we'll also talk about the recent interview with Robert Rodriguez in The Hollywood Reporter. Punch it. Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7 by 7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So we've been talking in the past few episodes when we've talked about various Boba Fett teasers and trailers and whatnot, that the footage we're getting seems to be just kind of expanding just a little bit on footage that we've already seen. For example, we talked recently about the shot of Jennifer Beals and how one particular teaser seems like it had just a couple fractions of a second extra in one versus the other, and that allowed us to see that maybe there was a little bit of shock of recognition on her face, presumably at Boba Fett arriving. And then of course the Empire magazine story showed the two of them in conversation directly, so there's that. The whole swoop bike situation, and you get to see one, then you get to see two, then you get to see 9 of them. Or those red jumpsuited folks that are seen surrounding Boba Fett and Fennec Shand in the initial teasers, but then subsequent ones show them parkouring across rooftops and whatnot. So that's apparently very deliberate and intentional, this whole thing of only showing a certain set of scenes and then just kind of giving us little ticks extra here and there. And that's the case with this new Ready teaser as well. Ready is the name of the teaser that is appearing on YouTube, and of course we'll link to it at the blog post for this show's episode at sw7x7.com if you haven't seen it yet, and in the show notes as well. There is a new bit of dialogue where we have the line we've heard before about Boba Fett saying, "Jabba ruled with fear, and I intend to rule with respect." So new line of dialogue where Fennec Shand responds, and seemingly responds, and I'm saying seemingly responds because we don't necessarily know if the two lines are delivered one right after the other, but certainly the counterpoint is intentional, where she says, "In difficult times, fear is a surer bet." And we get another new line of dialogue along with another new shot of the parkouring red jumpsuit folks, where Fennec Shand says this is just the first wave and says they're going to war. And this also seems to sync up with new shots of Boba Fett getting resuited up into his armor, and you get the idea. I know we talked about the possibility that had been suggested about this being, the Twi'lek healing baths, but it does seem like this conversation, just with a few fractions of a second more that we get of the shots and the new shot of Fennec Shand saying they're going to war, that we are up in the cupola, if you will, of Jabba's palace, like just at the very tippy top with all the open windows and curtains and whatnot. Like, it seems like that's where this is happening, and maybe that restorative chamber, if you will, is up in that very high part of Jabba's palace. And as Boba's getting dressed, he responds to that by saying, "And then we'll be ready." And there you go. I guess that settles that, right? Oh, and there is also a little bit more of just that scene where two of those criminals are roughing up two random Tatooine people who might be Cammy and Fixer, maybe, as has been suggested in other courts on Star Wars social media. Their reaction to Boba Fett coming into wherever this is, like, there's just an extra second of that too, or extra fraction of a second. Anyway, so the reason why I wanted to bring the Hollywood Reporter piece into this whole What to Watch Now thing is because it actually addresses this thing that we've been observing about how it's just certain scenes that we keep seeing over and over again, and maybe from just a slightly different angle with another shot, or maybe just a few fractions of a second extra. It turns out that this is actually a thing that's happening, and it's been very intentional. So here's a quote from the story. It's written by James Hibbard for the Hollywood Reporter. It says, "If the Book of Boba Fett teaser trailers released so far seem a bit less than epic, it's due to a deliberate act of restraint. The producers have only revealed footage from the 7-episode season's opening minutes." And then there's a quote from Robert Rodriguez, the showrunner. "We can't use the second half of the first episode because it gives so much away," Rodriguez says. "But the basics are that Boba and his assassin partner Fennec Shand, played by Ming-Na Wen, have taken taken over Jabba's palace on Tatooine, a move that sends them on a journey into the previously unseen Star Wars underworld of crime families. Which also brings to mind something that we don't yet know, which is how long the episodes are. We don't know if we're talking half-hour series, hour-long series. Obviously, these things get, a little less meaningful when we're talking about a streaming series on, whether it's Disney Plus or any other streaming service, actually, because it's not as if they're going, all right, like it's, 42 minutes plus commercials, so it's going to be an hour, and that's that. Yeah, obviously there's more flexibility in these situations, but whether it's skewed more toward the half-hour side or more toward the hour side, like that's something that is probably a relevant-ish conversation, and yet we don't know, but it does seem like this suggests that we are looking at hour-long episodes, give or take. So tying all this together, everything we've seen so far seems to happen in the first half hour of the first episode, and that's a lot. We're going to get a crazy action sequence with all these red jumpsuited folks. That person they capture, or the red jumpsuited person they capture, is going to be dragged to Jabba's palace, presumably, and also to this town wherever they meet with this Ithorian character who may be the mayor. Maybe that's the character's name, and there is a character called the mayor who's voiced by Robert Rodriguez himself. That's pretty amazing. And we're going to get some Boba Fett backstory before The Mandalorian. We're going to get that dinner with Jabba's former captains. We're going to get him receiving that Twi'lek inside Jabba's palace, inside of his throne room there, and for whatever reason looking down the grates at the former Rancor pit, so something happens there. We're going to get him in that restorative chamber with the conversation with Fennec Shand, their visit with the mayor, and bringing that captured red jumpsuited person around here and there. The thugs that we see on the swoop bikes and messing around with those two Tatooine residents. All of this is happening in the first 30 minutes of the first episode, so it is going to be jam-packed. So go back and watch all the trailers and just consider the possibility that this is all happening within a half hour or less of that first episode of the show. And that, line in there about it seeming less than epic, well, gee, when you put it in that frame, suddenly it seems like this is really gonna be epic. Yeah. And there you go. That's what I've got for you for the show today. And it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for it, as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
Star Wars 7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2021 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.